Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Let's Chat. I'm Dr. Diana Bitner of True Women's Health, co-founder and physician at True Women's Health. I can't wait till soon you meet Suzanne Pettigrew. She's our PA at True, and she'll be joining on Let's Chat in the near future. A little bookkeeping. Tonight we're going to talk about Let's Chat about your brain. And next week we're going to Let's Chat about headaches. The week after 4th of July, I am so honored to announce a panel of experts. Dr. Jim Simon, he's coming back again. Dr. Maria Sophocles, she's going to talk about the Mona Lisa laser touch. And Cheryl Kingsburg, a PhD in Cleveland, world-renowned expert on sexual health and all matters women's health. We're going to talk about the value of concierge or personalized wellness plans and how we can really get engaged in women's health and how women deserve personalized care, whatever that looks like. So let's get down to business. Tonight, let's chat about your brain. I'm going to talk about why I, as a physician taking care of women, care about brain health, but also we're going to talk about some definitions. What does this mean? What can you do? And then 5 tips to take away from tonight to support your brain health, to avoid brain fog, and also 5 things I want you to ask your healthcare provider in the sense of that's what you deserve. Now, this has been a big week for me and for our team at True. We've opened our clinic. We're seeing patients. Every day has been full. And so if I have a little brain fog or forget something for a second, please forgive me. There's a lot going on. And so I might kind of get off track for a second. So we're going to keep this real. Also, please, if you have any questions, please put them in the sidebar. And hey, Linda. And I just looked at the comments. So if you have any questions or concerns or anything you want to talk about, please put them in the sidebar. So when I think about brain health, I'll never forget the first time that I really got how important this was. I gave one of my very first talks about women's health back in Grand Haven, Michigan, years ago at the hospital I used to work at on brain fog. And I said that word into a crowd of people, and hey, Melissa, in a crowd of people, and I said something about brain fog, and the whole crowd just like, everyone was paying attention. I was a little on the younger side. I really didn't get what that meant, but so many women said, this is a huge deal. And when I think about this, I think of a certain patient. We'll call her Liz, not her real name. And Liz came to me because she just didn't feel like herself. She had heard that I helped women in the midlife and the menopause, and she knew that something wasn't right, but she didn't know what it was. She just didn't feel like herself. And as we got into the conversation, she said, for example, her kids were saying, Mom, like, what's going on? I have to tell you things 3 times. You don't remember anything I tell you. And her husband would say, honey, I told you we were going to have so-and-so over for dinner. She had people like show up at her house and she had forgotten she was going to be entertaining and to quick, make do. She was then starting to see that it was leaking over into her work life. She was starting to have to make more lists. She said, I used to remember everything. People would ask me questions. Now I'm asking other people, or I'm trying to hide it by making lots of lists and really trying to stay on track. But I can't remember. I go into the copy room. I don't know what I want to copy. Or I go to the store and I can't remember why I went. Or I won't go into my study. I can't remember what I was going to get. So she really started to notice that it was affecting her home life and it was affecting her work life. And, the time that it really scared her, she had a meeting with clients. She didn't remember they were coming, and she had to scramble to try to fake that she did remember. She wasn't fully prepared, and she was really stressed that, hey, I could have lost those clients. And these years of midlife, she was 48 at the time. She was in the time of, this is key earning potential, right? This is time when we really want to be successful and feel good about our work. We also have a real important opportunity with our children as they're getting older to help them get off into the world and to really be present with them. So if we're foggy at home or foggy at work, we might feel like, okay, I'm kind of losing it here. What also made it hard for Liz is that her mother had a bad menopause. And she didn't really talk about it, but she and her siblings and her dad knew that, okay, mom is kind of checked out. She's either in a room with her headache, she's cranky, she's moody, and she's not really present. She's not participating. It got better with time, but Liz was really afraid she was headed that direction. And on top of it, now her mom was diagnosed with early dementia. So Liz, like so many patients who come in and see me, they're like, oh my gosh, do I have dementia? No, you don't have dementia. Am I crazy? No, you're not crazy. First of all, people who are crazy don't know they're crazy, right? So if you're concerned that you have dementia or are crazy, you're not. But it's a really common fear when dementia and mood disturbance we see happen to our older female relatives. And of course, we don't want that to happen to us. For Liz, she was like, I'm going through hell trying to get my mom situated, and I'm so sad for her. I don't want to do that to my kids. And she got really tearful when she talked about this. So I'm rambling a bit, but basically it's really to understand that brain fog is a really common symptom of the midlife or the menopause transition. Also, I remember early in my career, when PMS was kind of coming, more people were talking about PMS, and I had a patient who said, every month I have depressed mood. I'm irritable around the time of my period. And my husband just rolls his eyes at me and said, oh, it's your PMS, like it wasn't real. And I loved it when a study came out of Australia that showed us that they really had looked at women who had new onset mood disturbance, irritability, depression, anxiety, around the time of their periods and around the time of menopause without any history of prior depression or anxiety. So they really gave more credibility to the fact that this is real. And we know from multiple studies, the Women's Health Study, the KEEPS trial, we know that this is real. Dr. Mackey is one of my mentors. I so look up to her in Chicago. She's a PhD and studies the relationship between estrogen and mood in women's health. And I just read a literature search she did and a meta-analysis, meaning she analyzed lots of studies together that looked at all the data around the fact that depression is more common in women going through the menopause transition. Brain fog is very common in women going through the menopause transition, even when they didn't have it before. And the good news is that even without estrogen, the symptoms can get better. Let's go back to Liz. So what else was going on with Liz? So she's 48. Her periods were starting to get irregular. She also was starting to get night sweats before her periods were starting. So let's think about this, night sweats. You wake up in the middle of the night, and then of course, what would her mind do at 2 a.m.? It would race to, oh my God, what do I have to do tomorrow? And I can't believe I'm awake. How long am I going to be awake? I can't go back to sleep. Now I got to pee. Now I got to go to the bathroom. Now maybe I'll go fold some laundry, and I might as well just go to my office and do some work. So she was maybe getting a good 4 hours of sleep. The rest of the night was spotty. She'd fall back to sleep at 5 and her alarm would go off at 6. So she'd waste 3 good hours of potential sleep at night. So she wasn't sleeping. The other thing is that her periods were getting irregular enough, maybe even she was missing 60 days of, between cycles. So she was really having some days of low estrogen, and she would definitely have more brain fog on those days, more anxiety, more like, didn't feel like doing stuff. We know that when women have low estrogen, they have more cognitive decline in the sense of they don't have the same recall. They don't have the same ability to store memories. They don't have the same ability to process. And we know that, for example, over time, even the corpus callosum can shrink. What's that? That's a part of the brain that connects the left brain or the right brain and the left brain to talk to each other. And so that can actually shrink with time when estrogen is low. So it's really important to know that these are real. So anyway, she was having low estrogen. So Liz was what I like to call in the perfect storm. What is the perfect storm? So you know how when you have a big storm front out over Lake Michigan, for example, you've got 2 big groups of clouds coming together, and when it hits, it's a storm. So what happens in the perimenopause is that you have the symptoms of perimenopause: poor sleep, low estrogen, hot flashes, night sweats, and then you have the physiological changes, as in your cholesterol's going up, your blood sugar is going up, you're insulin resistant. You have these 2 storm fronts coming together that really result in, let's say, more risk for heart disease, more risk for dementia. And she was in that perfect storm of she wasn't sleeping, so she wasn't wanting to get up and exercise. Her cholesterol was going up, her sugar was going up, her weight was going up. And so then she felt more, didn't like her weight. She was depressed about it. So again, you can kind of see it's like one thing leads to another. And she was really having a hard time. So we'll talk about what the options are to do about that. But it was, a really important thing that she came in. And this is why I care about this, because she didn't have to suffer. These things, there are solutions. And number one, she wanted to know why. She wanted to know she wasn't crazy. And if that's all we had done, that would have given her a lot of relief to know that she's not alone and she's not crazy. But then we gave her options and she was able to re-engage in her life and feel better. And it's not that hard, and it doesn't take a lot of medication, and it's not crazy. Again, knowledge is power. So, again, these are key times. I just don't want to forget anything. So first of all, let's talk about low estrogen. What does low estrogen do? So there are so many receptors in the brain, especially in the frontal cortex and in the limbic system, the emotional, the reaction system, that really help those cells function better when there's estrogen present. So we know, for example, from studies by researchers like Dr. Mackey, who really study cognitive decline on tests that measure that. They look at different depression scores, like the PHQ-9, which is what we use in the office to help measure someone's level of depressive symptoms. So when these are looked at, we know that women have low estrogen. Again, they have more risk of these things. And so it's just purely estrogen, and those receptors can start to cause that. What estrogen also does is it gives an increased risk of depression, maybe because of the effect directly on the cells, but we know there's a very close reaction or relationship between estrogen and serotonin. Serotonin is one of those main brain chemicals that us girls depend on to feel like ourselves. And we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I want you to think about serotonin like money in the bank. Okay, so you make money, you spend money. You make serotonin when you sleep. You make serotonin genetically. Some people make more than others. We spend serotonin, and again, this is a very general way to think about things, but it really does apply. We spend serotonin on all these life events. So for Liz, she was worried about work. She had 3 teenagers that were all doing different stuff. Her mother had early dementia, and she was worried about her. Her husband had a full-time job. She had a full-time job with clients, and she was trying to maintain clients and get more clients. And so it was one of those things where she was spending a lot of brain chemical thinking about all that she had to do. And then when your estrogen is low, you go through brain chemical quicker. So part of her symptoms of irritability and less motivation was that she likely had an imbalance in her brain chemicals, her serotonin. She had a deficit. And when we have a deficit of brain chemicals, then again, we can have more depression, more irritability. I had a patient today tell me she doesn't tolerate stupid, anymore. Like, she really understands people more, she feels, but she really has a hard time, when people aren't carrying their part of the load. When things don't make sense, she doesn't tolerate that very well, and she doesn't like that, but it's just that her tolerance is down. So we all express this in different ways. What I want you to think about a hot flash is again, is a sign of low estrogen because of how it affects our thermostat, but also we know that during a hot flash, there's poor memory recall. So let's say you're in the throes of, I saw a patient recently having 4 hot flashes an hour. So we know that not only can a hot flash be distracting, it can be embarrassing, but it can also affect our brain function at the same time. So when women are having more and more hot flashes, they're also having changes in their brain that you can measure on MRI. So actually with imaging, you can see those structural changes happen. And also, what happens is that you are having, you can't store a memory when you're having hot flashes, again, from a biochemical way, but also from a way of being distracted and embarrassed. So those hot flashes really make a difference, as well as interrupting our sleep. So of course, if we're having a hot flash or a night sweat, then we're going to wake up in the middle of the night and all of that happens. What's the power of sleep? Again, we've talked about the power of sleep to affect serotonin, but also there's this whole concept around brain cleaning. And I don't pretend to be a brain expert or a sleep expert, but know enough to know that while we're sleeping, Our brain, the pathways that we're using a lot are maintained, and the pathways we don't use are not. And so those healthy pathways of storing memories, recalling memories, being functional, all of those pathways, it's just starting to be understood how that all works. But there are actually cells that go in and clean our brain when we're sleeping. Our brain actually sort of, the paths dilate, allow those little cells to go up and clean. And again, I'm being a little general, but yet there is a lot that happens in sleep that's so important. So one of the things is, for Liz, is if she could prioritize her sleep, that would really help a lot of things. If sleep were a drug, we wouldn't be able to afford it. It reduces risk of depression, irritability. It reduces the risk of heart disease, of stroke, of dementia. It helps us lose weight. I see patients who they're doing everything right, but sleeping, and they can't lose weight. They start sleeping, they lose weight. It really has a lot to do with our insulin resistance. So sleep has a lot to do with our overall health, and it's super important if we don't want to have brain fog. Another thing I want to talk about is multiple stressors and what that does. So when we're in that flight or fight situation, so think of Linda when she was seeing those clients come in the door that she didn't remember that they were coming. So what happens? That immediate flight or fight. Flight or fight is that survival instinct that we have. For example, if a bus is coming at me, I'm not going to think about what kind of bus it is. I'm going to get out of the way, right? So when we're in flight or fight, we are not thinking logical thinking. We're not thinking logical thought. We are very much in survival. So when we're in survival, it's harder to store memories, like when you meet someone to remember their name, or she could have even forgotten her client's name because she totally was in flight or fight. But also we can't recall names. We can't recall things. Think of it if you're on a stage and you're trying to give a talk and all of a sudden you get nervous or, and then what happens? You go into fear mode and you forget everything you were going to say. And so it's that flight or fight. The concept is called cortical deactivation. It means we deactivate our frontal cortex when we're in flight or fight. This term was coined by a Dr. Benson at Harvard, who's written some of my favorite books on this, called The Relaxation Response. These books are available. I bought a couple yesterday on Amazon for $1.50 a piece. They're used, but they're really good books that talk about how can we use meditation and gratitude in that moment. We'll talk about that in the tips. But what I want you to think about is there's a lot studied and known about that flight or fight response. And so when we have that flight or fight response, again, we can't find words, we can't find names, and it can be really upsetting if you're in a job or in a situation that requires you to remember people. Can you imagine a politician not being able to remember someone's name? Wouldn't be good. So it's really important that we think about, again, all the impacts of this, but when we go into flight or fight, it's being prepared for the situations that we know we might be in flight or fight. But then once we start to feel those feelings, how can we get them to pull back, get back in our smart part, and then do what we got to do? So let's talk about hormones. Are hormones good for brains or bad for brains? I had a patient a couple weeks ago who really wanted to consider taking hormone replacement therapy, but she thought she had read something that showed that hormones actually increase dementia. So it's not a simple yes or no. So we know a lot from the Women's Health Study that when women start estrogen late in life, let's say they've already been through menopause for 10 years, let's say they're 64 years old, they've been in menopause for 11 years, we know that they probably already have some plaque or some blockage in their blood vessels, maybe in their carotid arteries, the big ones, and or the little blood vessels in the brain. So if we already have a little bit of clogged arteries going on, and we add especially an oral estrogen that is synthetic, the Premarin from the Women's Health Study, we know that maybe we can increase the risk of dementia if we already have been that far out from menopause, if we already have some blockage. If we start when the brain is good, if we start hormone replacement therapy in the early stages of menopause, then we know then we can decrease potentially the risk of dementia. And there was a study, I mentioned it on Facebook the other day, there was a study just published in the journal Menopause that looked at patients in the KEEPS trial. So the KEEPS trial is a study that looked at women in the early transition within a couple years of that last menstrual period who took nothing versus oral estrogen versus patch estrogen. And it showed that the women who took estrogen, either the patch or the oral, had slower structural changes in their brain. So we know that our brain changes with menopause, independent from aging. It happens as our estrogen levels drop. And what happened is that the women who took the estrogen early in the phase, they actually slowed the changes that relate to low estrogen. So we know that women who take estrogen are able to slow those mental changes and potentially have lower risk of dementia, or at least more good years without brain fog. So estrogen can be a good thing, but we don't want to start it late. So if someone comes to me and they're 70 years old and they're like, hey, I heard you talk, can you give me some estrogen? I'll be like, no, we have to weigh the pros and cons. So my goal is, number one, safety, number two, happy. So we've got to stay safe, and having a stroke is not a good thing, obviously, in terms of looking at maybe having less brain fog. Let's go for a little brain fog and figure out how to deal with that, not have something significant like a stroke. So again, estrogen can be really important in terms of that brain function. And so personally, I'm very fortunate. It's a safe thing for me to take estrogen, and I'm going to take it as long as I can. So partly, I'm going to stay really healthy in order that I can continue to take estrogen. Now, for some women, again, who can't take estrogen, it's not safe for them because they have a history of breast cancer, or they're on an estrogen blocker because they've had breast cancer, or they've had a prior blood clot in their legs or lungs. You know, on one hand, bummer, because yes, estrogen can help, but there are so many other things in terms of self-care. So it doesn't mean you're going to get dementia if you don't take it. We just have to be really careful about every other risk factor. What are the risk factors for dementia? Having a parent with dementia, of course, does increase the risk, but it doesn't mean you're going to get dementia. Most dementia is actually related to risk factors for heart disease. So what I want you to think about is all those brain cells up there, they need nutrients. They need oxygen. How do they get nutrients and oxygen? Blood, healthy blood flow. So healthy blood flow that's not full of fat. So someone who has high cholesterol, maybe it is taking a statin. We know that a plant-based diet is way better even than a statin. So it's to do everything we can to keep our cholesterol low. Number two, it's to not have high blood pressure. What does high blood pressure do? High blood pressure pounds at those blood vessel linings. Thank you, Melissa. Pounds at those blood vessel linings that then damages those blood vessels so they get leaky. And so then they allow the plaque to stick and clog the pipes. It's all plumbing. Remember, parts is parts. It's all plumbing up there. And so if we damage those teeny little blood vessels that get up to those brain cells that are thinking, then we're not going to get good blood flow up there. So high blood pressure and high cholesterol really increases the risk of dementia. Number three is high blood sugar. So women who have untreated diabetes, their blood sugars are high, their A1Cs are greater than 6.2. Those women have high blood sugars, which make those blood vessel linings sticky. So I want you to think about, we want your blood vessel linings to be like the inside of your mouth, smooth and shiny. We don't want them sticky. And if you have high blood sugars, then those blood vessel linings are sticky and plaque or fat sticks and clogs the pipes. If we clog the pipes, no blood gets to the brain cells and we can't think, and we have an increased risk of dementia. We think that's even related to Alzheimer's in the sense that we all make a little bit of that plaque that gets all cloggy, like spider webs in Alzheimer's. But how can we clear out that plaque if we don't have any blood flow, if the pipes are clogged? So again, everybody, it's really to think about what are those risk factors and are we doing everything we can? Now, what that does is lead me to the tips. So 5 tips to do about brain fog. Number 1, breathe. Take a deep breath. You don't have dementia, likely. You don't have, you're not crazy. So it doesn't mean how this is going to be forever. So even if you can't or choose not to take estrogen, we know that the symptoms can even get better a couple of years after that last menstrual period. Partly is it because women get used to it and you figure out workarounds, because us girls, we're smart and we take care of what needs to be done. But actually the symptoms can get better. And again, some women do great without estrogen, without even a thought. But again, if you start to have these symptoms, take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Number 2, I want you to think about using these symptoms, brain fog, forgetfulness, a little bit of I want you to think about this as a gift. It is, okay, don't kill me, right? It's a gift to tell yourself you've got to get your act together, right? It's the next 50. And I can almost get tears thinking about these women who suffer the next 50 because they didn't know any better. They didn't know to ask for help. So use these things as a gift. Do not be ashamed. For example, Liz tried to fake it for how long, right? She tried to kind of keep things together without asking for help. Remember, women who cope, they ask for help when they need it. So ask for help and focus on self-care. We know that self-care is a key. Number 3, look at underlying issues that put you at risk for this. Number 1, do you have a history of postpartum depression? You're more likely to have depression around the time of the menopause transition. Did your mom have a hard menopause? I had a patient whose grandmother, her mother, her great-grandmother, it was in the family that everyone hit menopause and they really had a difficult time. They had more depression, they had more anxiety. If that happened to your mom, yes, you're at risk for it happening to you. So it's one of those things to be aware, to ask early. Don't be afraid. We've got options to help you deal with this. And so, for example, do you have early menopause? Are you in, perimenopause where your cycles are starting to get really irregular? Look at those underlying issues and then we can deal with them. Do you have, for example, have you gotten used to using alcohol to help you deal with these issues? Are you using alcohol or marijuana to treat the anxiety? There are much healthier ways to deal with your anxiety: yoga, meditation, exercise, going biking with 3 friends and just hitting the trail and going like crazy. It works a lot better with fewer side effects than alcohol or marijuana. So it's to really look at what are those issues that put you at risk and how can you identify them and be ready for the menopause transition. I had a patient today who said, my main goal is to get ahead of this menopause thing and have it not take over. And I would say, who's controlling you? Are you in charge or is menopause in charge? Number 4, consider options to treat. So for example, maybe the option is really focusing on a healthy lifestyle. You know that I focus on the seeds, the 7 essential elements of daily success. So I want you to think about maybe just even self-care is what you need right now. Is it time to maybe consider a low dose, what we call SSRI? It's a medication that increases your level of brain chemicals like serotonin to help you cope with irritability, with depression. And it even can be very effective for women for hot flashes and night sweats if they can't take estrogen. So there are medications that can help. It's not that we go first to medications, but it's an option. Do we need to get you into therapy and you really have a way to talk in a structured way with an objective outsider who can help walk you through difficult situations? Structured talking or counseling can be very, very important to help you cope with difficult situations and kind of figure a way through. Also, it can be a time, if you've had prior trauma and that trauma is coming up. I had a friend whose daughter was unfortunately sexually assaulted, and it brought up memories when she was sexually assaulted. And so that really affected her ability to even be intimate with her husband. And so it's looking at those issues, and that caused her a lot of stress, right? So it's looking at those issues, and do we need to look at treatment? Doesn't mean just medication. It means looking at you as a whole person. And again, at True, we've got a whole team of providers in the office and in our community that we can help get you connected so we can help get some things resolved. Number 5, the power of gratitude. So the power of gratitude is so important to get out of that flight or fight. So back in the day when I would do major surgeries and everything was going crazy, if I needed to really settle and get out of that flight or fight, me as a surgeon, I couldn't be freaking out, right? So it would be take a deep breath, think about a couple things I was so grateful for, look away just for a minute, breathe, and get back in the game, right? If I'm going to give a talk and I'm nervous or I haven't slept, gratitude is really important. If you walk, if you're coming into the house, you park your car in the garage and you're going to walk in the door and it's going to be chaos with everyone hungry, mom this, mom, what are we going to do? What are we going to eat? So when you're walking into a situation like that, I want you to just sit in the car for a second, breathe, think about what you're grateful for. We know from those studies from Dr. Benson that gratitude is one of the most powerful things to take us out of flight or fight. If you walk into a Christmas party with your, with work and you got to remember people's names, have a little bit of gratitude before you walk into that meeting, before you walk into that situation. If you're going to ask for a raise, make sure you do your gratitude and you really get into a calm place where you can recall all the reasons that you deserve that raise. You see what I mean? So really practice that gratitude. Every night, it can be really helpful to write in a gratitude journal so that when you need that thing that makes you so grateful you could cry, it's good to remind yourself of that every evening, and then you can pull it out when you need it. So those are 5 tips. We'll have this in the blog. You can review them again. So after I'm done with this, it will go into a blog. It goes up on the website. And again, you can review this at your leisure. For your friends who, by the way, for your friends who are not on Facebook, this streams also to YouTube. You can go to the True Women's Health YouTube channel and you can access this as well. Again, all women deserve this knowledge. So last thing, 5 things I want you to ask your healthcare provider. You deserve this information. Number 1, what is my phase of ovarian function? I talk about this a lot, but you deserve to know, are you in reproductive phase? Your hormones are even and make sense? Are you in perimenopause and your hormones are all over the place? Or are you in menopause and your hormones are now low because your estrogen, your ovaries went into retirement? So your estrogen's low, your progesterone's low, and your testosterone is likely low or getting low. So it's really important to know, thanks Debbie. So it's really important to know your phase of ovarian function. This is not rocket science. Number 2, what are your risk factors for memory problems or mood disorders? So again, if it's in the family, know it. Ask your mom, ask your dad, ask your aunts, like what was going on? Who's got what? And what am I at risk for? Am I at risk for mood disorders? Again, did I have postpartum depression? So it's okay to talk to your healthcare provider and say, hey, I'm doing okay right now, but I think I'm at risk. Can we talk about this? And can we have a plan so I don't have to wait on hold or wait for 3 weeks to get an appointment? Like, I want to know what I'm supposed to do when and if that happens. Do you have a counselor I can talk to? Do you have a psychiatrist I can talk to? Like, plug me in, take care of me. You deserve that. Number 3, what habits affect my risk? If you're not sleeping, you're going to be foggy brained. So, it's so important to know those habits. If you're drinking a lot of alcohol, yeah, you might go to sleep easier, but you're going to wake up at 2 a.m. and you're not going to get back to sleep and your sleep's going to be disturbed. So that extra glass of wine, you might at the moment have thought you deserved it, but it's not doing anything for your overall health and you're not even getting better sleep. So maybe you have this much wine and this much club soda, make a spritzer on most evenings and save that really expensive glass of wine for the weekend when you don't have to get up early and you don't have to function. So look at those habits. Exercise. This morning I got to be on Fox. I get to be on TV. I talked to Shelly on the radio. I had a really big day. So I chose to work out this morning because I know that when I exercise, it gets my blood flowing. I feel good about the world and I'm ready to go. So if we exercise on a regular basis, it really can help our function. It helps our sleep. It helps our appetite. It helps us not gain extra weight that can make us depressed. So again, it's really looking at those habits and track your seeds. For people who choose to be patients of True, you get to use the True app and you get to track your symptoms, you track your habits, and we as your coaches are watching that to help solve for any barriers that might come. Okay, number 5, what are treatment options for my stage of ovarian function? i.e., if I'm in perimenopause, what can I do for those 4 days of night sweats every month? We have options for that. If I'm in menopause, what are my options? So at True, we're really careful to look at your whole health. What is your history? What are your risk factors? What really is the best option? And then we give informed consent. These are the pros, these are the cons, this is what might happen. Hey, maybe let's start this. If this doesn't work, this is the next option. So I really want you to have a sense of what your options are. So again, today we've talked about why I care about menopause, that all women deserve this knowledge because we deserve to not suffer and we deserve to live a healthy life, especially those next 50 after. We talked a little bit about why people have brain fog and why people have more mood disturbance in the perimenopause. And then we talked about options to take care of this. So I wish you all clear minds, clear brains. Maybe don't go celebrate with a glass of wine tonight. Go for a walk, have a big glass of water, and enjoy your evening. So I wish you well. Thank you and take care.